The breaking point, the last hope for peace. Ambassador Rebecca Stone stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Harmony, watching the twin suns of the Andorian system cast their golden light across the peaceful blue-green world of Vallani Prime. After 20 years of bringing peace to countless worlds, she had never encountered a species quite like the Vallani. These gentle beings, who stood barely 4 feet tall with their soft gray fur and large, intelligent eyes, had achieved something remarkable in galactic history. They had never once engaged in warfare. Their cities below gleamed like crystal formations, built in harmony with the natural landscape. The Vallani had mastered sustainable technology centuries before most species even discovered fire. They created art that could move observers to tears, wrote poetry that translated beautifully across all known languages, and had developed medical techniques that could heal almost any injury without causing pain. When other species asked them about weapons or military forces, the Vallani would tilt their heads in genuine confusion, unable to comprehend why anyone would want to hurt another living being. Rebecca had been sent here because the Thex Empire was expanding into Vallani space. The Thex were everything the Vallani were not. Standing 9 feet tall with thick armored scales and burning red eyes, they had built their civilization on conquest and domination. Their ships looked like flying fortresses, bristling with weapons and painted in the dark red and black colors of their empire. They had subjugated 43 different species over the past 2 centuries, turning entire star systems into slave colonies that fed their endless hunger for resources and power. The diplomatic dance begins. Captain David Park, Rebecca's longtime colleague and friend, joined her at the observation window. His weathered face showed the stress of their current mission. At 55, he had served as a human diplomat for most of his adult life, believing deeply in the power of words to solve conflicts. The approaching Thex fleet was visible as tiny red dots against the star field, growing larger by the hour. The communication came through exactly on schedule. General Krex, the Thex military commander, appeared on the main screen of their conference room. His scaled face was a mask of barely controlled aggression, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to shake the walls. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship was dim and threatening, filled with warriors in black armor. Rebecca had dealt with aggressive species before, but the Thex were different. There was something in General Krex's eyes that reminded her of an ancient predator, something that saw everything else as either prey or competition. When she began her opening statement about peaceful coexistence and mutual benefit, Krex interrupted her with a sound that might have been laughter if it had contained any humor. The Thex position was simple and brutal. The Vallani system contained 3 planets rich in quantum crystals, materials essential for faster-than-light travel. The Empire needed these crystals, and the Vallani were too weak to deserve them. Krex spoke of the Vallani the way a farmer might discuss removing weeds from a field. They were obstacles to be cleared away, nothing more. The gentle resistance, Elder Mira, the closest thing the Vallani had to a political leader, sat across from Rebecca in their beautiful council chamber. The walls were made of living wood that seemed to glow with inner light, and the air smelled of flowers that bloomed year-round. Mira's large eyes held a sadness that seemed to carry the weight of her entire species' future. Rebecca made one last desperate attempt to save the situation. She contacted every major government in the galaxy, calling in favors accumulated over 2 decades of successful diplomacy. The Altarian Republic expressed deep concern. The Confederation of Free Worlds issued a strongly worded statement. The Crystal Collective offered to mediate. The Zephyrian Empire suggested economic incentives might change the Thex position. But when Rebecca asked for action, for fleets to be mobilized or real consequences to be imposed, the response was always the same. The galaxy's other powers had their own problems, their own territories to protect, their own trade relationships to maintain. The Vallani were too far away, too small, too inconsequential to risk a major conflict. Besides, everyone knew humans were excellent at solving these situations peacefully. Surely Rebecca would find a way to work things out. Standing in the council chamber of the Vellani capital, surrounded by beings who still believed that love and understanding could triumph over hatred and greed, Rebecca felt the full weight of failure settling on her shoulders. She had spent her entire adult life believing that every conflict had a peaceful solution, that patient negotiation could overcome any obstacle. Now she was watching that faith crumble in real time. Elder Mira took her hand, the Vellani's soft fingers warm and trusting. There was no accusation in her voice when she asked if the humans would be able to protect them. She still believed even now that someone would step forward to defend the innocent. Her people had prepared gifts for their conquerors, hoping to soften their hearts. They had written songs about the possibility of friendship between species. They had never lost hope that peace would prevail. When words become weapons, the attack began at dawn on the third day of negotiations. Rebecca was a bit wakened by alarms on her ship as Captain Park burst into her quarters, his face pale with horror. The Theks had abandoned all pretense of diplomacy and launched a full-scale assault on Vellani Prime. Their ships rained fire on the crystal cities below, while ground forces moved in to secure the mining facilities. From the bridge of the Harmony, Rebecca watched in helpless rage as the beautiful capital burned. The Vellani had no defense systems, no bunkers, no evacuation plans. They ran through their streets carrying their children and their elderly, seeking shelter that did not exist. Some of them still carried white flowers, ancient symbols of peace that they held up toward their attackers in desperate hope. The Thek soldiers showed no mercy. Rebecca's sensors detected the systematic destruction of schools, hospitals, and cultural centers. When groups of Vellani gathered in their temples to pray for deliverance, the buildings were targeted specifically. General Krex's forces were not just conquering the planet, they were erasing an entire civilization from existence. Captain Park tried to intervene, taking the Harmony into the planet's atmosphere and broadcasting on all frequencies that they were a diplomatic vessel under galactic protection. The response came in the form of plasma cannon fire that barely missed their engines. A Thek's voice, cold and amused, informed them that diplomatic immunity had been revoked. They had 30 minutes to leave the system or be destroyed. The last transmission. As the Harmony was forced to retreat beyond the range of Thek's weapons, Rebecca received one final message from Elder Mira. The transmission was weak and filled with static, broadcast from what remained of the Vellani capital. Mira's gentle voice, still calm despite the chaos around her, spoke words that would haunt Rebecca for the rest of her life. The elderly Vellani leader thanked the humans for trying to help them. She asked Rebecca to remember her people not as victims, but as beings who had chosen love over fear, creativity over destruction, hope over despair. In the background of the transmission, Rebecca could hear the sounds of a dying world, explosions, screams, and the terrible silence that followed each blast. Mira's final words were a message for humanity. She had studied human history during the diplomatic talks and had been amazed by the stories of human warriors who had fought to protect the innocent. She wondered aloud why these legendary fighters had not come to help the Vellani, but there was no bitterness in her voice, only curiosity and the gentle hope that they might still arrive to save others who needed protection. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Rebecca staring at a blank screen while the light of burning cities reflected off her ship's hull. She stood there for a long moment, feeling something break inside her chest. It was more than just the failure of diplomacy. It was the death of a worldview that had defined her entire life. Captain Park's voice, when he finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. They needed to report back to Earth immediately. The Terran Federation's High Council needed to know what had happened here. As the Harmony jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Andorian system behind, Rebecca composed her report with hands that shook with suppressed fury. For the first time in human diplomatic history, she included a single stark recommendation: the complete abandonment of peaceful solutions where the Theks Empire was concerned. Some species, she wrote, had demonstrated beyond any doubt that they understood only one language. It was time for humanity to speak that language fluently. The galaxy burns, The Awakening. Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen stood in the command center of Citadel Station, humanity's most classified military installation, built inside a hollow asteroid in the Outer Rim. The station had been humanity's best-kept secret for over 50 years, a place where Earth's finest military minds had prepared for a war they all hoped would never come. The walls were lined with tactical displays showing the positions of human fleets that most of the galaxy didn't even know existed. Chen was a man shaped by conflict, though few outside the military knew it. At 62, he had spent 4 decades studying warfare, not the romanticized battles of history books, but the brutal mathematics of modern combat. While human diplomats had been bringing peace to the galaxy, Chen and his officers had been asking a different question. What happened when peace failed? The report from Ambassador Stone had arrived 6 hours ago, and its contents had sent shockwaves through the highest levels of human government. The complete breakdown of diplomacy in the Andorian system was more than just a tragedy. It was a paradigm shift that changed everything humanity thought they knew about galactic politics. President Sarah Martinez appeared on the main communications screen from Earth, her face grave but resolute. Behind her, Chen could see the emergency session of the Terran High Council still in progress, with representatives arguing heatedly about humanity's response. The debate had been going on for hours, but the military had already received their preliminary orders. Chen's aide, Commander Lisa Torres, approached with a datapad containing the latest intelligence reports. The Thex Empire had moved quickly after their victory at Valani Prime, claiming the entire Andorian system and beginning the systematic strip mining of all 3 planets. Early estimates suggested that over 40 million Valani had been killed in the first wave of attacks, with the survivors being herded into labor camps to work in the quantum crystal mines. What the galaxy didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. While Earth's diplomats worked openly to maintain peace, its military had been building a force capable of projecting power across the entire galaxy. Hidden bases in dead systems, weapons research conducted in black sites, and recruitment programs that identified the most capable individuals from Earth's vast population. The human fleet that emerged from concealment was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Where other species built their ships for show or intimidation, human vessels were designed with a single purpose: to win wars as quickly and decisively as possible. They were smaller than most alien warships, but packed with technology that had been developed in complete secrecy. Chen's flagship, the Retribution, was typical of human military design philosophy. Its hull was a matte black that absorbed sensor readings, making it nearly invisible to most detection systems. Instead of the massive energy weapons favored by other species, it carried precision strike systems that could target individual buildings from orbit. Its crew of 300 was cross-trained in multiple specialties, capable of operating independently for months if necessary. The fleet that assembled around Citadel Station represented the culmination of 50 years of careful planning. 12 battle groups, each built around a core of heavy cruisers and supported by frigates, destroyers, and specialized assault craft. The ships carried weapons that had never been tested in real combat, but had been refined through countless simulations and wargames. Commander Torres briefed the assembled fleet commanders on their mission parameters. The Thex Empire controlled 17 star systems and maintained a military force of approximately 800 warships. Intelligence suggested they were planning to expand their operations into neighboring systems, using the Valani conquest as a blueprint for future campaigns. The art of war. Chen had studied every great military strategist in human history, from Sun Tzu to Clausewitz to modern theorists who had adapted ancient principles to the realities of space warfare. The key to victory, he knew, was not just superior firepower, but superior understanding of the enemy's weaknesses. The Thex thought like conquerors, which meant they had grown complacent after centuries of easy victories. Their ships were heavily armed but slow and unwieldy. Their tactics relied on overwhelming force applied directly, without subtlety or deception. Most importantly, They had never faced an enemy that could match their technological capabilities while surpassing their strategic thinking. The human battle plan was elegant in its simplicity. Rather than attacking the Thek's home system directly, which would allow them to fight a defensive battle on their own terms, Chen's forces would strike simultaneously at 12 different targets across the empire. Supply depots, communication relays, isolated garrison fleets, and civilian infrastructure that supported the Thek's war machine. Each human battle group was assigned a specific objective and given complete tactical autonomy to achieve it. This distributed command structure was something the Theks, with their rigid military hierarchy, would find difficult to counter. By the time they realized the scope of the first strike, the attack began at exactly 0800 Galactic Standard Time, with human forces dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of 12 different Theks-controlled systems simultaneously. The opening move was not kinetic weapons or energy blasts, but something far more devastating: complete electronic warfare shutdown of all Theks military communications. Human cyber warfare specialists, working from ships equipped with the most advanced electronic countermeasures ever developed, infiltrated Theks military networks and began systematically dismantling their command and control systems. Within minutes, Theks commanders found themselves blind and deaf, unable to coordinate with their fleets or call for reinforcements. Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays from the bridge of the Retribution as his forces moved into position around the Thek stronghold of Karak Prime. The enemy had been caught completely off guard, their ships scattered across the system in standard patrol formations that left them vulnerable to coordinated attack. The first Theks vessel to be destroyed was a heavy cruiser that had been guarding the system's primary communication relay. The human destroyer Vengeance appeared less than 1,000 kilometers away and launched a spread of kinetic penetrators that punched through the cruiser's shields and armor as if they were paper. The massive alien warship broke apart in seconds, its crew never having time to return fire. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as human forces demonstrated capabilities that shocked even their own allies. Theks battle stations that had been considered impregnable were reduced to scrap metal by weapons that struck faster than light itself. Entire fleets were disabled by electromagnetic pulses that fried their electrical systems without harming their crews. The message. But Chen's strategy went beyond simple military victory. Each human attack was precisely calibrated to send a message, not just to the Theks, but to every species in the galaxy that had stood by while genocide occurred. The humans were not seeking conquest or territory, they were delivering justice. When Theks military installations were destroyed, the human forces made no attempt to occupy the territory. Instead, they broadcast detailed records of Theks war crimes to every inhabited system within range. The galaxy was forced to confront images of the Villani massacre that had been carefully documented and preserved, along with evidence of similar atrocities committed against dozens of other species over the centuries. The liberation of Thek slave colonies became a cornerstone of the human campaign. On world after world, human ground forces landed not as conquerors but as liberators, breaking the chains that had bound entire civilizations to lives of forced labor and degradation. The former slaves, many of whom belonged to species that the galaxy had written off as extinct, were given the tools and resources to rebuild their societies. Captain Sarah Kim, commanding the assault on the slave world of Tertius VII, reported scenes that brought tears to the eyes of hardened military personnel, beings who had been born into captivity and had never seen the sky without bars were weeping as they breathed free air for the first time. Children who had known nothing but endless labor were laughing as they played in the ruins of their former prison camps. The Reckoning. The Theks Empire's response, when it finally came, was both predictable and ineffective. General Krex, the architect of the Villani genocide, managed to rally approximately 200 warships for a final desperate assault on Earth itself. His plan was simple. If the humans wanted war, he would bring it to their home system and make them pay the ultimate price for their defiance. What Krex discovered when his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system was that humanity had been waiting for him. The defensive installations around Earth were beyond anything in his experience. orbital battle stations that made Thek's dreadnoughts look like patrol boats, minefields that stretched across entire sectors, and pawns platforms that could track and destroy targets at ranges that should have been impossible. The battle for Earth lasted exactly 17 minutes. Krex's fleet was not merely defeated, it was systematically dismantled with clinical precision. Human defenders used the Thek ship's own momentum against them, channeling them into killing fields where overlapping fields of fire left no escape routes. Advanced human fighters, piloted by veterans who had trained for this moment their entire lives, danced between the massive enemy vessels like deadly angels. When General Krex's flagship was finally cornered, Admiral Chen himself opened a communication channel to the Thek's commander. Krex, his scaled face twisted with rage and disbelief, demanded to know how a species of diplomats and peacekeepers had become such formidable warriors. Chen's response was simple and devastating. Humans had always been warriors, he explained. They had simply chosen to be peacemakers first. But when peaceful species like the Vellani were massacred while the galaxy watched and did nothing, humanity remembered why they had originally developed the capacity for violence, to protect those who could not protect themselves. The New Order. In the aftermath of the Thek's empire's complete collapse, the galaxy found itself facing a new reality. Humanity had revealed military capabilities that exceeded anything previously imagined, but rather than using this power to establish their own empire, they had done something unprecedented. They had used it to enforce galactic law. The Terran Federation announced the establishment of the Humanitarian Protection Fleet, a permanent military force dedicated to preventing genocide and protecting vulnerable species. Unlike traditional peacekeeping forces, these ships would not wait for bureaucratic approval or diplomatic clearance. When innocent lives were at stake, they would act swiftly and decisively. Other galactic powers, many of whom had refused to help the Eleni, suddenly found themselves eager to cooperate with humanitarian efforts. The Altarian Republic offered to share intelligence on potential trouble spots. The Crystal Collective volunteered to help fund reconstruction efforts on liberated worlds. The Confederation of Free Worlds requested joint military exercises with human forces. President Martinez, addressing the Galactic Council from Earth, made humanity's new position crystal clear. The age of tolerating genocide for the sake of political convenience was over. Any species that chose to prey upon the innocent would face the full might of human military power, applied without hesitation or mercy. The memorial on Vellani Prime, now a monument world protected by human naval forces, Ambassador Rebecca Stone stood before the Memorial of the Gentle, a crystalline structure that preserved the names and memories of every Vellani who had died in the massacre. The memorial played recordings of Vellani music and poetry, ensuring that their culture would never be completely lost. Elder Mira's final message was displayed at the center of the memorial, her words serving as both a tribute to her people's faith and a reminder of what could happen when that faith was met with cruelty. But surrounding her message were new inscriptions, added by the dozens of species that humanity had liberated from Thek's oppression. These beings, once written off as casualties of galactic politics, now spoke with voices of gratitude and hope. They told stories of human soldiers who had risked their lives to free strangers, of human medics who had treated former slaves with gentle hands, of human engineers who had rebuilt worlds devastated by centuries of exploitation. Admiral Chen, now serving as the first commander of the Humanitarian Protection Fleet, joined Rebecca at the memorial. Together, they watched the twin suns of the Andorian Syst set over the restored landscape of Vellani Prime. New cities were rising from the ashes of the old, built by former slaves working alongside human volunteers and automated construction systems. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the true nature of humanity. They were indeed a species of diplomats and peacekeepers, beings who would go to extraordinary lengths to solve conflicts through words and understanding. But they were also the descendants of warriors who had fought their way up from the bottom of their planet's food chain, and when pushed beyond their limits, they could unleash destruction on a scale that made even the most aggressive species pause in fear. The message had been delivered with devastating clarity. Harm the innocent at your own peril. Humanity was watching, and humanity would not be denied justice twice. The galaxy trembled not from fear of conquest, but from the knowledge that someone finally cared enough about the weak and defenseless to fight for them with everything they had. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Rebecca and Chen stood in comfortable silence, knowing that while diplomacy had failed the Villani, it would be given every chance to succeed for future species in need. But if words proved insufficient, the galaxy now knew that humanity possessed both the will and the power to speak in a language that even the most brutal tyrants could understand.